I love this time of year of college football. What's up, everybody? Hope you're having a super blessed day. And today we're going to be going over what did we learn from last night's Alabama versus LSU game. Let's get into it. Be sure to leave this video a like, comment down below your thoughts and opinions on the game, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out when we do these game breakdowns. First and foremost, this was one of the just pure best college football games that we have seen all year. The fact that it was a rivalry game between Alabama and LSU, the fact that the game was close the entire time, and the fact that it went into overtime, that is just a perfect mix to make one of the best games of the year. So getting into the overall breakdown of the game, this was a phenomenal game where neither team really beat themselves. LSU had to go out there and beat Alabama, and Alabama didn't allow themselves to beat themselves. Alabama these past couple weeks, yeah, were there a couple of untimely penalties that put LSU in some solid positions? Yeah, but overall, it wasn't a consistent downpour of penalties like we have seen Alabama do these past couple of weekends. Overall, both these teams did a phenomenal job of protecting the ball, moving the chains, and then just playing phenomenal defense. This was also a great matchup of two elite level quarterbacks, obviously a little bit on different levels, but both elite in their own right. Obviously, I'll go over Bryce Young's struggles. It's not really his struggles, it's more of the receiver struggles, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. But Bryce Young did everything that he could. He was also kind of selling a little bit, but he was doing everything that he could to try and move the ball against that tenacious LSU defense. And Jaden Daniels was out there moving like young Michael Vick. But now getting into the individual team breakdowns, we're first going to start off with Alabama. And Alabama is going to be the team that we're going to see struggle the most, and we're going to see how good of a coach Nick Saban truly is over these next 3 to 5 years, depending on how long he continues to coach, because with this introduction of NIL and the relaxed transfer portal rules, it's not the days of where Nick Saban can keep 15 first-round wide receivers on the bench and then just wait. All of them are just going to wait for their time to play at Alabama. Now these guys are going to be going different places. Now these guys are going to be transferring out, and they're going to try and find a new home somewhere else so that they can play earlier. The one area that Nick Saban's Alabama team struggles the most at is wide receiver. They have talent. They really do. I mean, Ja'Cory Brooks was a 5-star wide receiver coming out of high school. Jermaine Burton was a 4-star kid. But none of them have really, they're all still very young. None of them have really stepped up into being a consistent #1 wide receiver. Also, a quick side note, JoJo Earl made a phenomenal play late in the game. Why do you guys not start him? I feel like he's made big time catches late in games for Alabama a couple of weeks now. Why does JoJo Earl not get more playing time early? I feel like he's a more viable option than a lot of the other receivers that Alabama has right now. It's just a question because I think that JoJo Earl, he might not be your guys' wide receiver 1, but right now you got a bunch of wide receiver 2s, and I think that JoJo Earl could be another wide receiver 2 for y'all. But Alabama not having a definitive #1 guy or guys that can consistently get open quickly is why Alabama struggled so much in this game. When you can't just get the quick slant because your wide receivers aren't talented enough or they're not good enough to be able to, get a clean release off of LSU's phenomenal DB core and be able to get open quickly, LSU sending that heat every single play. Bryce Young doesn't have enough time to be able to just sit back there and wait for the 10-yard out, the 15-yard dig, the 20-yard post. He doesn't have time for those routes to develop. He needs to be able to get the ball out of his hands quickly and be able to hit his target effectively. And when all of his wide receivers are just being blanket covered because the only time they're getting open is if they can either just outrun a guy or if they can just take 15 seconds to get open. That is the biggest reason why Alabama struggled in this game. Their wide receivers were simply not able to consistently get open. But it also compounds that Bryce Young had one of his worst accuracy games that I've ever seen him have in college. I mean, first and foremost, for Bryce Young to throw a pick in the red zone on Alabama's first offensive drive of the game, when you're in Death Valley, when you are in LSU's territory, you cannot make mistakes like that. It's just going to get louder. It's just going to compound on the problem. Bryce Young needed to come out of that first drive with at least 3 points, but definitely not throwing a pick. And really, it should have been a touchdown right there. He had his guy open. He just threw it behind him and allowed the DB to make a play on it. And that was the case all game for Bryce Young. Just here and there on very key throws, he was throwing the ball behind his receiver. I don't know what was going on. I know that Bryce Young has been dealing with a shoulder injury, and I know that he hasn't had the same amount of practice time that he has in previous weeks to be able to, you know, get that connection with his receivers. He already has a pretty much brand new receiver core than the one that he had last year. So he's still trying to figure out the timing with guys. You could just see the whole game. He kept on trying to throw the back shoulder fade, and his receivers were just not picking up on it. It was just a complete lack of communication. His receivers weren't able to get open. He was throwing it behind guys. It was just a tough week for Alabama's passing game. Now, when it came to Alabama's running game, Jahmyr Gibbs continued to show everybody why, at least in my opinion, he should be the first running back taken. Not because I feel like he's the best running back, but because he is such an explosive receiving option. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs had 15 carries for 99 yards, averaging 6.6 yards a carry, and then he had 8 receptions for 64 yards, averaging 8 yards a catch. That is straight up production. Over 150 total yards against LSU's defense, and he is constantly explosive. Every time he gets the ball in his hands, he is making a big time play. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the most, if not the most explosive players in college football. On top of that, on the defensive side of the ball for Alabama, I feel like with how much man coverage that they were playing, it was a recipe for disaster. You cannot play man coverage when you have a quarterback as fast and as mobile as Jayden Daniels, because every time all they got to do is just clear out one side of the field. If none of those routes developed, all Jayden Daniels has to do is step up and take off. I mean, Jayden Daniels was LSU's leading rusher with 18 carries for 95 yards and that game-sealing touchdown. You cannot leave Jayden Daniels that open. You need to be playing zone. You need to leave guys in the flat coverages so that they can at least close on Jayden Daniels a lot quicker. Jayden Daniels was breaking them off for 5.3 yards a carry, but his long was 31 yards. I mean, he was out there getting big chunk runs very consistently against Alabama. But that's also the tough side of playing an LSU with a mobile quarterback, is because Alabama did a phenomenal job of just flat out covering LSU's wide receivers. I mean, LSU's leading receiver was Kayshon Boutte, who had 7 receptions for 51 yards. Like, that's pretty good if you ask me. Keeping a first-round talented wide receiver to under 60 yards, that is a very, very impressive stat line. But you cannot stay in that much man when you have a quarterback who's that mobile. He's just going to torch you the exact way that Jayden Daniels did. And the last thing that I want to talk about is J.C. Latham. I know he's still a young offensive tackle, but he is a liability on that Alabama offense. He is a big, strong guy, but when you got fast DBs and fast linebackers who are coming rushing in and they're able to get inside of J.C. Latham, he was getting burned pretty frequently. And it's a great transition because Harold Perkins had his number all night. Now switching over to LSU, all my LSU Tiger fans, can we talk about Harold Perkins for a second? There was a reason why he was the 5th best player in the nation and the #1 linebacker in the country. That dude is special. You guys got a star on your hands with Harold Perkins. He was out there flying around, causing havoc, straight up causing nightmares for Alabama's offense the entire game. I mean, Harold Perkins, as a true freshman, finished off his first time playing Alabama with a stat line of 8 tackles, 3 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 pass deflected, and 3 quarterback hurries. That's called filling up the stat sheet. On top of that, BJ Ojulari and Mekhi Wingo both had another phenomenal game of getting pressure on the quarterback. Those two guys, they consistently were just around Bryce Young, just making him just feel uncomfortable. And then Bryce Young's not the tallest quarterback, so that was another reason why he was constantly throwing it behind receivers, because he's just more so guessing and aiming where he's throwing rather than being able to see the ball all the way through to the wide receiver. So it was just a really great game for LSU's defense. They were out there playing phenomenal. On top of that, LSU, y'all hit hard the entire game. LSU was out there cracking Alabama offensive players. LSU was flying around. LSU was ready for this game. Hey, if you're a top 5 team in college football, you do not want to be going on big time away games right about now, because each and every single time a team has gone to an away game, it's looked rough for the away team. Like it really has. I mean, Tennessee just went to Georgia, they got smoked. When Alabama went to Tennessee came out with the dub, and now Alabama goes to LSU and LSU comes out with the dub. the crowd has been more of a factor than I've ever seen in college football. I mean, these false start penalties, it wasn't as bad in this game, but in every other game, the false start penalties and just the lack of communication, it was rough. So LSU fans, give yourselves a pat on the back, because y'all made it impossible to hear that night. And then we got to talk about the guy who conducted the win and was just overall played a very phenomenal game, which is Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels finished off with a stat line of 22 for 32 for 182 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then had 18 carries for 95 yards and a touchdown. Overall, very, very solid game. He protected the football. He never put the football in harm's way. He was making consistent passes. He was able to tuck the ball and run when he needed to. He held the ball when he needed to. Overall, Jayden Daniels played a phenomenal game and the perfect game that you would need to play to beat Alabama. Also, if Jayden Daniels decides to declare for the NFL draft, when he gets to the NFL Combine, don't be surprised if he's running a lot faster 40 than people think. Jayden Daniels has to be one of the sneaky quickest players in the entirety of college football. It looks like he goes out there and then he starts just pulling away from guys. He just has that just sneaky acceleration where all of a sudden he looked like he was running 4.6, so now he's all of a sudden looking like he's running 4.35. I know he doesn't run 4.35. He's probably running somewhere in the mid to low 4.4s, which is very scary for a quarterback. If Jayden Daniels is able to just get a few more weapons around him, I know that he has Kayshon Boutte, who is one of the best receivers in college football. Malik Neighbors had a phenomenal game. Mason Taylor obviously caught the game-winning 2-point conversion to win the game, and he was making great catches here and there. But if he's able to get a couple more offensive weapons, which if you haven't seen my LSU offensive weapons videos, you guys picked up you guys picked up a couple extra wide receivers for the kid if he does decide to stay. Hey, overall, LSU is looking to be in a very, very good position. I mean, the first loss to Florida State and the loss by 1 point, that's tough. Then the loss to Tennessee was just on a roll at that point. But if a couple more teams keep on losing, those are not bad losses. Your first loss to lose by 1 point to at that point, a very hot Florida State team, and then to lose to the #1 team in the country at 1 point, LSU got a chance to creep their way up into the college football playoffs. I mean, you guys are ranked number 10. You beat the #6 team. I see you guys moving up to probably, I mean, Clemson lost. Ohio State's, they didn't lose, but it was an ugly win. I could see them creeping up. Probably you guys are either gonna replace Alabama at 6 or you guys are gonna be 7. That's where I see LSU being right now. If you guys win out and one more team in the top 5 loses, I mean, Michigan or Ohio State's gonna have to lose. So if you guys win out and then you win the SEC championship game, you guys could be in the college football playoffs. It is not that far-fetched. So wrapping it up and giving my final thoughts, Alabama, this just simply was not your year. You need to have more wide receiver weapons and just wide receiver talent to be able to give Bryce Young something to throw to. When Bryce Young is back there, he's not the tallest receiver, so he needs to be able to see his guys quickly and early before the pocket collapses around him, and now all of a sudden he's just looking at 6'7", 340-pound dudes. So you need to have just more wide receiver talent around him. Overall, Alabama's defense played great. Alabama's offense was solid, but just wasn't able to get the wide receiver talent going. And then Bryce Young just chose the wrong day to have a bad accuracy game. So it's tough. You guys are still going to get a really good bowl game. It's just not what we're used to seeing for Alabama. Hopefully Alabama's able to retool. I've already made a video on Alabama's offensive and defensive pickups, and you guys are still, even with the NIL and all the transfer portal, you guys still bring in top 5 recruiting classes each and every single year. So Alabama fans, I know it's going to be a tough one because, you know, it's supposed to be always national championship hunting. It's not going to be your year, but hey, overall, very, very solid year. It's going to be a little wrinkle in your guys' history, but overall, you guys are going to get a solid bowl game. And for LSU, win out, win the SEC championship game, you guys are a lock to make it into the college football playoffs. And LSU could be one of the scarier teams to have to go up against simply because they have a phenomenal defense. If Harold Perkins continues to play the way that he's been playing, he is going to be a devastator on that defensive side of the ball, on top of having BJ Ojolari and Mekhi Wingo and all the other defensive weapons that you guys got. And then if Jayden Daniels is able to get that 75 to 125 rushing yards a game, LSU on a good Saturday is going to be a tough beat for any team. I'm just saying that. So hey, be on the lookout for LSU. They might be able to put a little something together for the end of the season. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave this video a like and comment down below what were you guys' thoughts on this Alabama versus LSU game. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit your notifications so you never miss when we drop these game breakdowns. And if you just want to see your teams win out for the rest of the season, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And with all that being said, I appreciate all y'all. Now we'll catch you guys in the next video. Ciao.